Hello, welcome to the Moon Bath, where we chat about what's on our screen under the digital moonlight. We're gonna talk about a lot today. Last year, or the last couple of years, I did reactions to the Oscars. The Oscars happened like a whole week ago now. It feels like so old news by now. Is it even worth talking about it? I mean, I guess I could go through a little bit. It was all right. So Conan is back. I don't quite remember exactly what he did last year. I just have a general vibe that he did a decent job, and I feel like this year it's a bit even better. His hosting job, I do like the opening sequence of him dressed up as Gladys from Weapons, going in and out of every of the Best Picture nominees, or a lot of nominees. I guess not all Best Picture. Weapons wasn't Best Picture, was it? This wasn't. K-pop, Demon Hunters, fun stuff. Overall, I think he's a good host. And I think he's like, I think he has broad appeal, I think, in general, but not so broad appeal that it's boring, He's not like a Kimmel or a Fallon, the other late night host. He has the wit that tops them, I think, and just general fun personality, goofy Looney Tunes kind of personality, and it's fun stuff. Some of the gags were cool. The overall Oscars was okay. It felt like a little bit muted in terms of its politics. I feel like there are some speeches and some presenters who said stuff. Javier Bardem was like no to war and free Palestine. Some presenters, but I think it said some stuff. But I feel like because a lot of the winners weren't very as outspoken regularly, they didn't say much in their speeches compared to like other like previous award shows this year, or even previous years, where there was more outspokenness and even some censorship. But at least the Oscars didn't censor the free Palestine comment, and a lot of great dresses, a lot of great outfits as usual. Good looks. Oh yeah, we got the new casting award. That's the first time. We got some cool moments. Also, like the first time a woman won cinematography, for Sinners in one battle after another were the big awards. Sean Penn didn't show up. Whatever. This is fun. Oh yeah, there were some funny gags, like this joke about how Netflix execs pressure their movie makers to spoon feed the audience, because they're distracted by their phones, whatever. It's screen viewing people at home these days. So a lot of movies are just watered down with like repetitive exposition to get everyone on board with what's going on. They don't have to pay attention too much, which is kind of just degrading the cinematic screenwriting in general, which is pretty shitty. But not here at the Oscars. We celebrate some great movies, apparently. I mean, most of the movies that were nominated, I like, especially Best Picture, I thought were decent, but not that great. We check out my favorites of 2025. I go over what I like. Oh, that was a cool moment here where it was a tie, the short film tie that rarely happens. I guess that was interesting. Some interesting moments. Paul Thomas Anderson won for the first time the screenplay. Then he went on to win director and Best Picture for one battle after another. And just his speeches Like his first screenwriting speech was nice, but overall, like it kind of shows like his general politics, and how they reflect how One Battle After Another felt a little hollow with its politics. It's not didn't have very much revolutionary dialogue or text to it. It's more just aesthetics, which kind of reflects how in his speech he's mostly talking about the film process and also himself, not so much taking the opportunity to speak out on the issues of today. No one even mentioned ICE the whole ceremony, and so that was just interesting. Maybe Ryan Coogler did win for adapted screenplay. That was like the big award, and then the best actor for Michael B. Jordan. Those are the two big wins for Sinners, and they did a good memoriam segment. They definitely extended it with paying tribute to more of the well-known people who passed, like Robert Redford and Diane Keaton and Catherine O'Hara. Yeah, it was okay. Nothing super spectacular happened. There was no big controversial moments, no slaps, no like mistaken award announcements. But I think the lasting thing for this Oscars is really just the fight between Sinners and One Battle, two camps. I appreciated, as I spoke in my review about it, I appreciated aspects of One Battle After Another. I think Sinners is definitely going to be more of a cultural or milestone in culture. Here we have the cinematographer winning for Sinners. And so I feel like Sinners is going to be remembered more. And it's going to probably be, one of those scenarios where what happens often, right? Where like the most impactful movies in the culture are kind of often don't really win at the Oscars. But overall, decent stuff, decent show. Really fun gag at the end, with Conan, kind of, referencing the ending of One Battle After Another. So it's kind of a spoiler for One Battle After Another if you haven't seen it. He's like, oh, like he's gonna be the host for the rest of his life of the Oscars. Of course it's a trick there, and this is the scene from One Battle After Another, pretty much, except for that billboard. But I do wonder, like, did he film like different versions, like, because he wouldn't have known, right, who wins Best Picture, and maybe there's different versions. There's like a Sinners version of him like becoming a vampire and becoming the host for life of the Oscars as a vampire. That could be pretty fun little skit. I wonder if they filmed that, and maybe they'll release that at some point, but maybe not, I don't know. And then would he have done one for every single nominee, I don't know. That's just a fun little thing. But yeah, whatever. That's the Oscars. My favorite outfit was probably Chloe Zhao's. I feel like some people don't like the fabric, the texture. It's kind of like a trash bag. But I like the style. And I don't think she won anything. But also, as this person says, she's really sad about the Buffy reboot. That was another thing in the culture news this last week. The Buffy reboot was canceled. I haven't finished Buffy. I've been watching Buffy, for several years. I watched it, a little bit of it when it was out, when I was like a kid. When it first came out, but I wasn't like too religious about it, but a few years ago I went back and I started watching it for real, and now I'm like at season 5 or something, or season 6. to start season 6, and I was meaning to like hurry up and finish, all the way to season 7, because this reboot got me excited. It's like, oh cool, I want to see what Buffy's like without the icky Joss Whedon, in the forefront. And then and they canceled. Apparently the pilot wasn't good, apparently, according to Hulu executives, whatever. But I don't know. It's hard to say. This happens a lot. They order pilots, and then for whatever reason they decide not to go forward with it. And maybe Chloe Zhao, is maybe too arty about it. I think it would be cool, to see how it looked. But because she did the what's it called? The one Marvel movie, the Celestials, the Eternals, and that was like an interesting take on the Marvel heroes. It didn't completely succeed, but I appreciate parts of it, moments of it, and aspects of it, and so maybe like Chloe Zhao isn't the best for more mainstream, genre, pop culture stuff. But I don't know, we know her from Hamnet, we know her from Nomadland, those type of more, I guess, slower, more maybe poetic movies. But I don't know, it feels bad that like a Buffy reboot led by women is no longer going forward, and I think they're gonna look into doing something else. So they're gonna probably use a whole different creative team to take the lead for that, which is kind of sad. At the same time, this week the actor that played Xander passed, and so which I learned more about him. Apparently he like abused his girlfriends. He was like convicted for domestic abuse and all that stuff. So he's not particularly the kind of guy you want to celebrate. And Xander's always been like kind of a stand-in for Joss Whedon. And he always felt like a little bit of an icky guy himself. So I don't know if that cosmically indicates something, his passing and the passing of the reboot. We might not see Buffy anymore. But maybe it's time for something different, something else, something new, We'll see where that goes. Something new, like, is everything gonna be AI slop? Another thing that happened this week that's been a lot of attention, particularly in the gaming community, is this DLSS 5. I thought was interesting, because it ties in what's been going on with the acceleration, the investment from venture capitalists into the whole AI world that we're living in now. Here we see the new technology in gaming where it's gonna yassify our characters. That's the most egregious image. But there are other examples. This is just like a work in progress build of the new DLSS technology. This one looks a little better, but you can see where they're going from it. But it basically like takes the image each frame and runs it through an AI generator, and so averages out the image to make it look better, apparently. But it turns out to often look just like an average of images scraped from the internet, which comes with its own issues, of course, ethical issues, and just aesthetically, the aesthetics of fascism is what it represents. And it's, and a lot of, people in the comment sections of the video that this was featured in, like pretty much everyone hates it. And it, there's a whole bigger issue with like AI data centers polluting and disadvantaging communities where they're centered in, raising electricity prices, polluting the water of the people who live there, affecting, mostly black and brown communities, poor communities, enriching the, tech companies and the executives and CEOs and such, because they're all in on this technology that no one wants, and most everybody is now agreeing that they want it, they don't want it, even though a lot of people use it. They're in their search, in their chat GPT chat bots, without thinking too much about it. I think the uproar is getting louder and louder, and what's interesting is that I think in gaming in particular, because I think there's a whole culture in gaming that like is anti-corporate, anti-capitalist, but they don't even like realize it, almost, like, because a lot of gamers are just want to have a fun game, and when games start introducing these monetization practices like gacha systems or loot boxes or something, it like blemishes and erodes the original artistic and game intent of the developers, and it ruins the gamification, or the idea of what a game is to a lot of gamers that they grew up with, who are now, most gamers are now like in their 30s or 40s, I imagine, like the ones who are vocal, at least, in the internet, and like and those gamers grew up with the PlayStations and Nintendos of the past, where everything was simpler. But now, as every technology, this applies to most technologies, like even the internet, like as it gets more mainstream, it gets more corporatized and engulfed by capitalism, and shittifying everything, right? And so what I wish would happen is that, like, I feel like these culture media sites and influencers would connect more to the real world politics, like why is this happening, why this AI is encroaching on everything and ruining everything, connected to the real policies in politics that is affecting all this, to maybe impact change, because a lot of either gamers or movie lovers, whatever, just culture general people who are into that stuff, may get angry on the internet, but it doesn't lead them to anything, and they just feel like, let's go back to how it used to be, like let's return to how gaming used to be, how the internet used to be. But they're not connecting it to the system as a whole. And I know, like, a lot of people go to this stuff for escapism, but I feel like we need to start addressing these things, addressing the material world more in our coverage. To hopefully to make more of an impact, even if it upsets people a little bit, makes them uncomfortable. Like this last week, we saw some election losses in Illinois for progressives. Pro-Israel AI and crypto groups saw mixed results, but they succeeded in getting a lot of the Democrats they wanted, and to win in these elections. These are primaries, like for Congress in Illinois, for example. Kat Abu-Ghazala was, one of the youngest and leading progressive voices campaigning at, nowadays. so it was unfortunate. She got pretty close. And the thing is that like there was other progressives running as well, and there were so many of them that they split the vote. So like had some of them dropped out and endorsed Kat, you know, they would have, those votes would have combined to beat Bliss, what's his name? Yeah, Biss. Who is more like the standard regular Democrat guy. And you know, and then, you know, AIPAC, all those, they were putting so much money into trying to get Biss to win, and also like even getting some other progressives some ammunition and clout to like kind of spread the vote. Like one of their tactics was to promote, you know, certain candidates that they knew weren't going to win, but they knew that would spoil the vote in favor of the one that the candidates they actually preferred. So it's all these politics and campaign tactics that, you know, unfortunately succeeded in this race. But we still got the midterms this year. There's still going on. So basically, like, I feel like if somehow the uproar with the AI stuff in gaming, or even in movies too, because like Arabowski's doing an AI TV show, like all this stuff, like if these media companies or organizations or even more indie news outlets or YouTuber influencers, whatever, can connect it more to the politics, and maybe we can start seeing how, like, yeah, maybe we should start promoting more of these leaders who are, you know, against these data centers, against, you know, trying to regulate these tech companies. I feel like there's a link missing there that we could get to. I don't know, it's just something I was thinking about. But that's electoral politics. There's also on the ground work we can do ourselves to at least, you know, through mutual aid and helping our own community if, you know, they're suffering because of AI centers or whatever, but also just to build awareness within our communities outside of electoral politics. But it's all like we all have to work together, basically. It's all these things have to come together. You know, because there's some good news sometimes. This guy, Afroman, the guy who's behind that song, "Cause I Got High," there goes I got high. You know, from all those ages ago, I kind of forgot about him. He won a lawsuit versus the police department in his town because they like raided his house for stupid reasons, you know, and it's illegal reasons. And then they sued him for defamation because he made fun of them in a music video. It's a fun music video. Check it out. And so that's nice to see that, you know, there's still some victories in regards to free speech. And we, you know, some people, some artists are able to get away with criticizing the police and stuff, authority. So the thing about this guy, though, is this is kind of fun video, is that he is a libertarian, and some people say he's MAGA. And here's a video of him hitting a woman on stage. I guess this woman ran on stage or something. Like, that's an excessive force. That shouldn't be. So this guy's problematic. I think he said some transphobic things in the past as well. He like reposts libertarian stuff. But he did do that fun video making fun of the cops. So I don't know. It's all a mixed bag, you know. Even little victories we get here and there, all a mixed bag in this mixed world where atrocities keep on going, keep on happening. This father dies in ICE custody in North Texas, for example. That's still going on. And then the latest thing about the Gestapo is that they're going to airports. They'll be checking IDs at the airport. starting Monday, apparently. We'll see how that goes. You know, so the Nazis are expanding further and further. U.S. imperialism continues. I'm sure you've seen the news in regards to Iran. What's going on over there? The mess in the Middle East. There's continued sanctions and blockades in Cuba. This person reports, a friend in Cuba just notified me that every single patient in the hospital that was on ventilators died tonight. I don't have words. They're cutting off oil supplies, so they have to go through blackouts. Therefore they have to shut down certain sectors of the cities and stuff, and sometimes even shutting down hospitals, ending to death. So basically genocidal, basically what the US is doing. Here's people commenting, but there's this one report here where China is trying to help with sending solar energy, solar panels, and solar equipment to help. So that's what's been going on this week that I've noticed, and I'm sure there's a bunch of more stuff going on in this world we live in. But I've also been still watching movies and stuff, so we're gonna talk about some movies. I was gonna take a break from movies, and I kind of am now, but I did watch a few. So I'm trying to get into reading more books and stuff, and so I have a to read list on my Storygraph account. You can check out somewhere, linked in somewhere. Besides reading leftist theory and stuff, I was thinking of reading some classical literature that I never got around to, but also I was like, maybe there's so much I want to read. There's a lot of contemporary stuff I want to read, that maybe there's certain stuff I should just maybe watch the movie version, and then maybe if I'm into the story, I'll go back and read it. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna check out some Tolstoy, So I made a list of movies I should watch. Some based on Tolstoy stuff. Hold on a second. I got a list somewhere, and also just in general stuff. I watched Anna Karenina, basically 2 Anna Kareninas this week, or earlier. I'm probably gonna watch War and Peace later. Crime and Punishment, that's Dostoevsky. Pride and Prejudice, the Jane Eyre book. The Wuthering Heights, also in preparation for watching that new one with Margot Robbie and Frankenstein guy, Jacob Elordi, which I heard is shit movie apparently, or a bad movie, not that great. Something like it, I don't know. But, that way I can at least be familiar with the stories. So I started with Anna Karenina. This is Tolstoy's I think so this is Leo Tolstoy's one of his earlier books, right? Novels. Anna Karenina. And there's a bunch of adaptations. There's so many adaptations of this book. And it's basically might be one of the earliest, or at least the most known stories about infidelity. Maybe the story about infidelity. And I guess examining also the hypocrisy of the era. This is Imperial Russia, in the middle of the 19th century, I believe, right? Or late 19th century. Or 18th century, or no, 19th century. And so yeah, so it's, you know, it's basically this woman who's like falls for this other guy. She's married and they have an affair, and then things don't go as she plans. I guess I'll go into spoilers a little bit. If you don't know about the story and you want to check out your stuff, you can skip over to the next section. So we're doing some spoilers for the book, the 1800 book. What was it? 1853 or something? Is that when it came out? No, that 1953 is 1967 is when this one came out. This is the Russian version. There wasn't, basically there's so many versions of this, but this was from the 1967. It was hard to find this version, and I only got this like kind of crappy quality was able to obtain. And it was like, I think this is the only Soviet film version. Also, I want to check out more Soviet films, you know. So that's another thing it's on my list to do. So yeah, basically, you know, she falls in love and then that relationship ends up not working out, and then she ends up like committing suicide at the end. It's like a tragic story about love and infidelity and hypocrisy in a way, of the time periods of how women are treated as bad for cheating while men aren't and stuff. And then when you fall, you have an affair, but then the other person is having an affair later, and then like you feel hypocritical and stuff. It's a lot of these intricate things about desire and stuff, and pretty much almost like the prototypical maybe soap opera story or something. That's what it feels like, and this movie in particular feels dramatic in that way, particularly with the colors and stuff. And I don't know if it's like the copy I have, but particularly some of the images here, like this is a really striking color differential here, and you can see a little bit of flickering in the image. That might be the transfer from the film to video, whatever. But like the red is pretty popping there, but in the background. But then she looks like, and her Karenina looks like a ghost right there. I don't even think that's maybe not intentional, but it was kind of a nice little fluke in the transfer process of the video here, that I kind of like it, you know. It kind of heightens the theatrical campiness of the thing, because a lot of the acting here is also kind of broad and theatrical. But a lot of like the stylistic choices were interesting. Well, there's the framing, the colors, some of like the dreamy vision sequences almost were pretty interesting. And the actress here, I think, does a good job. But overall, it was kind of just an okay movie. But it was good to see that, you know, this is like, I wanted to see a Russian movie because, of course, Tolstoy is Russian, so I wanted to see at least the one Russian version. Again here, like she looks very ghostly. You know, and there's like some gothic elements in here that like are kind of spooky and stuff. Like this could have been made into like I could imagine them making a gothic horror out of this. Someone could do it, you know. That might be a fun vision of it. But then, you know, I watched the newer version, the Joe Wright version. Joe Wright, he's known for his period pieces. He hasn't done much lately, has he? I feel like I haven't seen any of his stuff lately. But this one, like, is like the production level is 100 times more than what they had in the 60s, 1967 Soviet Union, I guess. Um, and what he does with this one is that he also kind of like makes it explicitly theatrical. Like they're actually moving within a set, you know. Like you can see them in the on the stage in the background. Like, you know, it's part of the aesthetic of the movie, where it's almost like you're watching a play come to life. And so it's like, you know, these actors here are transitioning from their office space, you know, because this movie's also kind of about like the drudgery of bureaucracy as well. And then they just walk to the next part of the stage, and now they're, you know, in a restaurant. So that's like part of the imagery and the aesthetics of it. That's interesting take, in a way, to maybe lessen the production cost or something, to film it mostly on stage, incorporating the stage itself. But I think it's pretty well done, you know, and it's just like really nice to look at, and it feels very dreamy. Like, or even like the sequence here of like showcasing them at the train stop, but then like this is actually, we see a toy set, you know, this is the toy set that her son was playing with pretty much. And just those fun transitions, the colors, the melodramatic nature of the performances as well. It's kind of somewhat subdued sometimes, not completely overboard. I think Keira Knightley does a good job too. I think the beginning of the movie is probably more interesting and engaging with all what's going on, and then maybe it kind of loses it kind of goes off the rails a little bit later on. But overall, like, I did enjoy it. It's more like a fun, like, almost like an experiment of the melodrama, you know, using a classic story, you know, and, you know, just nice look at the outfits, the art direction in general, you know. It is, you know, it is odd that they are in Russia and they're all speaking in English accents, speaking English. That's kind of just a thing that happens in the movie business. And I think in most, like, all the known and our current adaptations are English like that. There's one with Vivian Lee, I think. I never watched. But I think it was an interesting take on the story. It's not like spectacular, but it's pretty nice. And it, you know, gives me a good idea of, like, watching those two films, like, okay, now I get an idea of what this Anna Karenina story is about. And maybe I'll go back one day to the book, but honestly, probably not. I'm actually more interested in reading Dostoevsky than Tolstoy. I feel like, you know, his book Crime and Punishment might be more up my alley. But it's interesting, you know, and this one does address more of the class dynamics, you know, one in particular, an earlier scene, with these characters. I feel like the other movie didn't quite address it too much, so it feels like, yeah, sometimes this story is too focused on the rich and proper, you know. And I feel like maybe the book goes more into the granular, you know, detail of the class divide. I imagine so. Anyway, so that's Anna Karenina that I watched. And then let's put on something else. Right. Okay. So then I watched this other movie, a completely different movie. Sometimes like I try to watch stuff that are related back to back. Or actually, I think I watched this before this. Yeah, I watched The Office Killer before, but for a reason we're talking about it out of order. Um, Let me get the video going here. Also, I have to load up the page to get the name correct. Right, Cindy Sherman. So Cindy Sherman directed this, who's like this is The Office Killer from 1997. It's kind of like an obscure cult movie. It's kind of like pretty much a serial killer movie. And Cindy Sherman's like a photographer. She's known for her photography, self-portraits a lot of times. So you can kind of tell some of the imagery here. Some of the shots are really like well composed. Like this intro sequence it's nicely done with the projection of the credits onto office supplies and stuff. And so it's kind of, it's her take on like the slasher film almost of this office killer. And really like it starts off with her like not intentionally killing, and then it just progresses further and further, and she starts amassing these bodies in her own basement, and the character, played by Carol Kane, is a really quirky character, that if you're interested in where she's going, like she's kind of unpredictable. Like if you get on her wavelength, it's probably really entertaining movie in that sense. Like you quite don't know what she's gonna do, how she's gonna do her next killing, whatever. And then, but it's also like has a lot of like campy elements. It kind of reminded me some of the acting and some of the off the wall, and kind of just diverse acting in the sense that like a lot of these characters almost seem like they're in their own movie, like the way their performance are. Like it's like they mix match. It's like they're from different movies jumbled into one. We got Molly Greenwald in here. We got that guy from Sopranos. I forgot his name. Some actors from that time period, the 90s. And so it's kind of like the tonal aspects, and it's kind of all over the place. And in some of the dramatic acting here with her screaming at her mom is like a little bit over the top, but it kind of has it kind of adds the charm of the movie. And so if you can get into it, and not take it too seriously, it's kind of like sometimes it's still very entertaining. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of John Waters even. And funny enough, I think he helped with the production or something. I forgot where I saw that. Or no, not John Waters. Oh yeah, Todd Haynes actually. It did remind John Waters, but like, some of the melodramatic parts was reminiscent of Todd Haynes, because Todd Haynes actually wrote part of this movie. Was one of the writers, and I guess like the home life, the chaotic home life, was kind of John Watersy, and like with the mother and her. But yeah, it's interesting. The other thing is that like it's kind of it feels unpolished. Like it feels like maybe they had a limited budget. They didn't have enough time to like get as many takes as maybe Cindy wanted or something, because there were certain scenes or aspects where it felt like, okay, maybe if they had a couple more takes, they could have gotten a better a better take there. It could have improved a bit. It could have polished the rough edges a little more if they just had a little bit more to work with. That's what it feels like. So it feels a little bit inconsistent. Like even some of the lines. There's like one line where like Girl Scouts come and like I don't know where it's at, and like she like stumbles with some words or something, and it almost feels like it's a take that like would have been cut out, had they had another one, and so stuff like that just it doesn't feel like completely put together as well as it could have. So like so this kind of became kind of like one of those cult movies in a way, and it's a fun slasher film. You check out. It's pretty short too. It's only like 80 minutes or something, and yeah. So it also has this guy. What's his name again? His name, I don't know. It's not coming up. But he's the guy who was in he's in the new Interview with the Vampire series. That's fun to see. It's, you see some actors pop in here and there that you might recognize. And what was I gonna say? I forgot. Anyways, it's an interesting movie. Might be a fun pick to watch with a group of friends or something. Maybe have a little bit of a laugh. That's The Office Killer. So there was like a few other movies that I watched before making my favorite of the 2020 favorites of 2025 that I did last week, that I didn't get a chance to talk about, that didn't quite make my list of favorites of that year. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but like one that kind of stood out was The Sound of Falling. The Sound of Falling. Let me bring up the web page. Masha Shlinsky. Okay. So this is The Sound of Falling, directed by Masha Shlinsky. This got some good buzz in the festival circuit, and it kind of just tells a story of like girls and women in, I believe it's Germany, throughout different generations, basically taking place around the same house, but with different families, over years apart, over like several years apart, moving in. And so somewhat it kind of doesn't quite always connect all the stories, and so it's kind of one of those movies that kind of similar to my critiques with a movie like Resurrection I talked about last week, where it's these different stories and thematically they all connect, but narratively that it's not always simple, and so like depending on how you can relate or like each particular story, some might appeal more to you than others, and so it all it may not all like work cohesively together depending on your preference and taste. And sometimes like it feels like, oh, maybe like it would have been better if this was like separate stories instead of one, but it's well made, it's well done, and good sound design too. I think I liked the older story here. It's felt very haunting. It almost felt like a ghost story almost, and this is kind of a ghost story in a way, because when different families move into this house, like it's almost like the ghosts and the ancestors, the spirits of the previous family are still lingering, whether it's their trauma or whatever that still lingers. And it is kind of about trauma. It's kind of about the experiences of women and girls, during all these time periods, and it also kind of shows maybe an evolution of that. I feel like the more modern version, it does kind of showcase how maybe particularly the mother character feels a little bit more free and liberated than the previous generations, and yet the daughters still have certain anxiety and stuff. It's kind of hard to like fully get into and really delve into. It's like one of those movies that feels like layered, and you have to kind of really go deep into the analysis of it to really fully understand it all. There's like some weird moments. There's a weird moment here that was interesting, but also kind of showcased the kind of intimacy that, you know, couples or married couples even have with each other that you don't really see in film when it comes to intimacy. So we're gonna see warning for a penis here, but she like puts his penis on her forehead, and like she said it's warm. It's just a very interesting interaction that you don't really see ever. Like you think it's gonna lead to some oral sex scene, but it's like just a weird human connection of like wanting to feel some touch and warmth, you know, connecting with a previous generation here of this one woman trying to, I guess, feeling some attraction to this one guy who's like wounded and stuff. There's a whole story there too, but like I don't know, just like weird little moments like that kind of stand out from this movie, or like a moment where one of the characters lays in a cornfield or whatever, or a wheat field, you know, about to be run over by a tractor, and like, or her like biting this guy's skin here on his hand, connecting to the eels biting this other woman when they swimming. Like these like visual little weird intimate scenes that are just kind of interesting. I don't know. And so like visually also it's like it has a grainy feeling to it, an analog feeling to it. There's like an audio sound every time it transitions, pretty much from different generations. It has this like crackly audio sound to it. It's like, I guess, just an aesthetic choice, but it kind of just feels almost like gives you like almost home movie vibes in a way. And again, like the opening story, they come back to every now and then. Maybe because it's like old fashioned looking, like, and then this picture of this dead child, like it has this spooky, like ghostly, otherworldly, like haunting vibe to it that I feel like, you know, this could easily have become like a horror film, you know, which is interesting. So I don't know, some, you know, different stuff. It's hard, you know, it's an odd movie, but it does feel like it has like a singular voice behind it. You know, I am looking forward to see what Masha Shalinsky does in the future. I mean, even just that little image there is like the image for the poster even. Feels like a horror story almost. And it kind of is a bit of a horror story in different ways. But yeah, it also has an interesting magical realism ending in a way that I won't spoil. But yeah, that's The Sound of Falling. And then I was, I guess, in the mood for more trauma. And so I put on The Piano Teacher the other day. This is a Michael Haneke movie. One second. Yeah, I'm not gonna. So, the piano teacher. Some weeks ago we talked about Sentimental Value, which was nominated and won Best International Feature this year at the Oscars. And in that movie, the father, grandfather figure, the director, film director character, gifted his grandson 2 movies on DVD: Irresistible and The Piano Teacher. It was kind of a joke, because they're very adult movies, not intended for children. And I thought I had to watch The Piano Teacher, but I actually watched, what was it called? The Piano, which is like the Jane Campion movie. And I had watched, I do remember Irresistible, but both of these, this Irresistible and this, are pretty much kind of about feature, graphic, traumatic sexual assault scenes. So warning for that. And I completely forgot what Irresistible is about, mostly besides that. But this is like, feels like the better film, because it focuses on this piano teacher, right? Who is this like quirky character, not quirky, like interesting character. She feels like one of the most like complicated characters in cinema, really. You don't quite understand what's going on in her mind, but she feels she's living this kind of repressed life as a piano teacher, because she's living with her mother, who is a repressive person, who represses her, and is always questioning like why she's out too late at night, etc. Even though she's probably like in her 40s or something, right? And like, and then they even sleep in this like side by side, which is really weird. So it's a really weird dynamic she has with her mother, and but she's very like strict about her teaching, her piano teaching. She's very competent in her piano lessons and stuff, like. And that's like probably the thing she likes. She invests her whole life in, really, is being a pianist and teaching it. But she has like this like secret desires, in the background, that I think is representative of how sexual desires are repressed in society, particularly for women. And on top of that, her mother is a dominating force, so she can't really express herself that way. So she has to like keep these fantasies in her head, and then she occasionally, goes to like a porn shop or something to basically do these weird stuff, like smell, these tissues with, that are soaked in semen from previous patrons. As they're watching porn and stuff, and like, and then there's scenes where she goes to a drive-through theater and like just watches like couples have sex and stuff, and like, so it's like all representative. And then she cuts herself as well, and like it's all these like hidden things that like you wouldn't ever know people do, And so it's an interesting way, like, film about like showcasing, the hidden side, the hidden world of someone who presumably is all prim and proper, like a piano teacher, classical piano teacher. And so there's like porn magazines that one of her students is looking into. And she she lambasts the kid for being a pig and stuff, while she's repressing her own sexual desires and stuff. And so that's like part of the movie, right? And it's how she gonna like, here's the scene where she's in the movie theater. So how is she dealing with that? She, there's a student who like, who seems to be, a pretty good, piano player, who wants to be in his class. And so she starts, there's like sexual tension and flirtation between them, and he seems like an interesting guy, maybe somebody she might be interested into. And so then they develop this weird relationship, and this is where we start to understand what this movie is getting at here. This scene in particular is one scene that's featured on the cover of the DVD. Basically her like showcasing her, she wants to be the dominant person in this relationship, you know. So it's basically, you know, like a sadomasochist type of story, and then this young man here is kind of like infatuated with her partly because she has this confidence and domineering nature to her, but he's struggling with submitting to her, right? You know, and playing this role of the submissive in that scenario. And so it kind of examines how men in our society deal with that too. Like, are they able to play the submissive role? You know, of course, there's that age dynamic here. He's probably could be in his mid-20s or something. Maybe he could be in his 30s. I don't know, but he's definitely like, you know, at least 15 years younger than her or something. And like, well, I guess he's like a piano student. Like, I mean, you could be a student at any age. But anyways, so like, because this is like, you know, private lessons. This is not like a school or anything. And so there's that dynamic there. So it's like, it's really insidious where it goes. So we are going to go, you know, it does build up slowly, but it's still kind of like, it's always very entertaining. And I think the performance by Isabelle Huppert, which is like her standout performance, she broke through with this performance. It was really powerful. I think without her, like, I don't think, you know, this would be a whole different movie. It really, you know, relies on her performance. Because like I've seen like I watched other Michael Haneke movies before this, and I think this is probably his best one. I don't know if he's ever made anything better than this, in terms of just the complexity of it all. I saw Funny Games. I saw Cachet a while ago. I feel like, yeah, because of Isabelle Huppert, like, this is what makes this, I think, like a classic of sicko cinema, really. But like, so we're going to spoilers here for this movie. The piano teacher. Spoiler time. And we are going to get into some dramatic moments of abuse. And we're going to, I guess, kind of discuss what I feel like this movie is saying, or my understanding of it. So it all comes to head really when she, you know, he follows her back to her apartment, and they shut out her mother. You know, this is like probably the moment where the character, Isabel's character here, Erica, is her most defiant, right? And through this letter, she reveals her exact fantasy she wants, right? That she wants him to perform, and he's repulsed by it. You know, it's basically, you know, she wants him to slap her. You know, she wants to be tied up. You know, she wants to live out this fantasy of being actually the submissive partner this time. You know, right in the same room, or in, you know, next door to her mother. You know, it's another weird, you know, psychosexual thing about her. But it's all these, like, you know, kinky sexual fantasies that she wants to live, role play, but in this, you know, secure, safe environment with this new, you know, partner she's courting, I guess. But it kind of goes to show like just the complexities of trying to navigate fantasies and kink in modern patriarchal society. This is 2001, but all this still applies pretty much. It's also based on a book, by the way. I'm not sure when the book was written, but I imagine not too long ago. And of course he's like disgusted and he leaves her. He doesn't want to do this. Now there's been debate about the proper how we should treat and think about kink and sadomasochist relationships. How they perhaps reflect contemporary power dynamics, and if they if it's damaging or perpetuating these power dynamics in the sex life, if that's bad for society, or if that's an outlet to explore it in a safe way. I think it's clear that our desires, our sexual fantasies, our interest, our what we're attracted to is influenced by culture, by beauty standards differ depending on what time you live in, the culture you live in. So definitely fantasies like this, sexual or not, are influenced by our culture. And if our culture is a misogynist culture, then it's going to bleed into our sex life as well. But the thing about role play and consensual role play is that ideally we could dictate our boundaries and limits and explore it, acknowledging that these fantasies are influenced by outside, but exploring it in a safe way with consensual committed partners. But the trouble of that is having to communicate with them and finding the right person, vetting them, and this is an example of how that can go awry, basically, because he shows up at the end and starts showcasing, okay, is this what you want? You want to role play? Here's the scenario. I'm going to beat you up. That's what you want. I'm slapping you. Basically, he can only do violence not on his terms. He can't accept the fantasy that she wants. She can't accept the role play on her terms, with her rules or whatever. He finds it sick, but he's comfortable enough to do it as long as he's in control. So it's kind of this diluted, he's not really self-conscious of his arrogance here, an attribute of his chauvinistic upbringing, most likely in this culture. Even though he didn't really show that as a student, it kind of comes out here in this intimate moment with her, and that's the danger of the potential danger of practicing kink, is with these partners that you don't really have a true connection with, or really understanding, or have this, or on the same wavelength, And so, but it all stems from the fact that she had to repress this fantasy. If she had lived in a more liberated, or a society or upbringing where there was better sexual education, for example, and in a community that she could feel part of, a community that maybe was more kink friendly, that had vetted people, had groups of perhaps women discussing, whether such and such partner is abusive or not, in a different world, this would have gone much better, you know, in a world where men don't feel like they're entitled to being the dominant person in the relationship, you know. And like it just showcases his complete lack of understanding of the fantasy she wants to role play. You know, he's like completely takes control, and it's a rape scene pretty much, right? And he that's what he feels that she wants, but he completely misunderstood, you know, what she wrote, you know, and what she wants, and she felt completely powerless in that situation. And so it's, in a way, you can kind of read this as like a tragic tale of be careful what you wish for situation. And so in a way, you can kind of see this as a critique of kink. But I think you can also read it as a cautionary tale of what could happen if you don't, you know, take the proper steps and vet your partner and have complete trust in your partner. And also the cautionary tale of like, we live in a society that, you know, is not like, what's the word, in a society that like educates men to be the dominant figure in a relationship, that has to have control all the time and can't, you know, entertain the fact that, like, you know, maybe women have certain desires that they want to try out, you know, that may include them being submissive in a certain context or being dominant in other contexts, you know, that may include her pleasure and not his pleasure as much sometimes, you know. It's like, you know, and also about, you know, trying to find, you know, pleasure on both sides for both of them, you know, not just one party in a society where men's pleasure is often prioritized, you know. And so this ending to me, where she goes, you know, after the day after she's been abused and assaulted, she shows up, no one really reacts to her bruises, you know, it's just all everything's normal, representing how pretty much even if she spoke up, no one would care or listen to or believe, you know. It's like, oh, you know, they might even be like, oh, well, you asked for it, you're the one who wanted to be slapped and hit, you know, that was your fantasy, well, here it is, so don't complain. So that's kind of like how society treats a lot of women, right, in these scenarios. And then of course he doesn't think like it's a big deal, you know. He's like, what, like, I did what you wanted, you know, time to go see you play the piano, let's go, just check it out. Like, she's almost like, her pain and suffering is completely invisible to everybody in this prim and proper society that represses, you know, our sexual desires. And so then she stabs herself, right? And for a moment I was like, okay, she killing herself right here? But I feel like she's like, she wants to feel a little bit of pain here. That's part of her masochistic desires as well, but it's an extension of that. But it's like also, it's like no one gave her that. No one, like, everyone treated her like nothing was wrong, you know. So she got no reaction from them, and so it's almost kind of representing, you know, how she feels about the situations. Like, you might, like, you're treating me like, you're basically, everyone's treating her like shit, like nothing, you know. And then so she kind of wants to feel that, like, oh, this is what you're making me feel right now, you know. And also, you know, she's just in a depressive state, you know, after going through this sexual assault, you know, and the world not reacting to it at all, you know. This is also like, you know, we saw her cut herself earlier on. This is a more extreme version of that, you know. I was like, fuck, I might as well just die right here, you know, kind of feeling. But it's more just like a wound. She seems like she's okay. It doesn't seem like she went that deep, you know. because it almost looks like she was going for a heart, but I think it's just almost like closer to her clavicle. And she wants to feel that pain, and that kind of relieved her tension. It's like, okay, now she's like, maybe she's decided, okay, I don't want to do this thing anymore. I don't want to be a piano player anymore, a pianist or a teacher. And she just wants to escape that moment, this cruel, indifferent, maybe more world, really more. It's more indifferent than cruel. And the indifference is kind of cruel in a way. And she walks away. And that's where the movie ends. And I think that maybe that represents her just walking away from this life and maybe starting anew, you know. She no longer wants to participate in the facade that is the classical, you know, classical music world. But you know, she's a interesting character, flawed, like, you know, and weird and unusual, but also feels like a real person, you know, with these like secrets. She like acts out in violent ways as well. She puts the glass into one of her students' coat to like wound her, and so the student can't play piano anymore, which kind of leads to you know, her love interest playing the piano. He takes over, right? Or no, she's the one who takes over. She's the one who takes the place of the student. And there's also the weird moment where she gets on top of her mom and kisses her. I'm still not quite sure what that's about. You know, that's kind of like maybe an acting out of like, you know, this is the moment after she was rejected, you know, so she wants to have some connection with somebody, and the only person there for her is her mom, you know, even though she hates her mom and stuff. It's like it's a weird movie. But yeah, it's complicated, but it feels like one of those movies that is completely unique in a way that you're not really going to see anything like it. So that's why I feel like it is like a classic. And overall, like, I would rate it high, but it's not a movie particularly, you know, like to watch. But it's not the movie you're gonna, you know, you're gonna rewatch over and over, of course. But I think it's a standout from the early 2000s, I guess, that time period. That's The Piano Teacher. Yeah, I guess, like, you know, after watching like Anna Karenina, Sound of Falling, all that, I was kind of just in the mood for more traumatic stories about women and what they have to go through in this world, I guess. Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think of this as like, to have this be like a bookend to watching Karenina. Because in Karenina, spoilers, she jumps in front of a train. But in this one, like, it's almost like Isabelle Huppert's character overcomes. You could read it as like, she doesn't take the easy way out of committing suicide. So it's like, but it's also kind of almost like the more realistic way of, the less melodramatic way of dealing with life, you know, as a woman is like in this world is not, you know, not necessarily like suicide, but living on scarred, you know, having to live on like that. Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of interesting analysis that you can get into that has been written about all those movies. But yeah, that's what I've been watching. That's what's been on my screens these last week or so. What do you think? What have you been up to? Let me know in the comments. Until then, I gotta go. I've been wondering about for how long can I keep uploading once a week. I've been uploading every Sunday the last few weeks. We'll see how it goes. I imagine eventually I'll stop. It all depends on what's going on. I don't know if there's anything new. Well, I might watch some new stuff. I have a whole list of stuff I've been watching. I have a whole list of stuff I need to watch. You can check out my Letterboxd. It's just whether or not I feel up to it. There's some new movies coming out. I don't know if I'll go to the theaters soon, but we'll see. Anyways, stay tuned. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.